can see you.
Okay, great. It's so strange, this. It's very unusual.
Mine's the same.
Chris can't see us either.
I can't see myself either.
It's
Can you
quite
hear me?
a relief, actually, not to be able to see myself.
Oh,
I can see you.
But you can see us. You can always, you can email the links. I don't know whether email works better. You don't know? Okay. So we're going to start. Okay.
Hello.
Hello. So I'm going to just do this sort of little formal bit, and I'm going to say welcome to Talking Education, an Above and Beyond discussion, which will take place on the last Wednesday of each month. An invited panel of education professionals will be asked to lead a discussion on an issue which is impacting on our schools today. And I'd like you to please share your thoughts on social media using the hashtags Talking Education and hashtag UK Poverty 22. So this month, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation published the report UK Poverty 22, the essential guide to understanding poverty in the UK. And I'm really delighted to invite our three panelists. We've got Anne-Marie Christian, who's a safeguarding consultant. We've got Chris Dyson, who's head of Parklands in Leeds. And we've got Sandip Manak, who is a class teacher and leader of reading at a primary school in Birmingham. So Sandip, Chris, and Anne-Marie, welcome. And then welcome to our audience. We'd like you to join in and take part as best as you can. Feel free to use the chat function because we're going to save it and we're going to share it later. I'd also really like to introduce you to Tess, who doesn't like being seen on camera, but is on camera today. And Tess is our community manager, and she's coordinated tonight's events, and she's here to make sure that I behave and I do things properly. And she's also the person who's going to be communicating with you when you go on the platform, because I don't want robots answering queries and all of that kind of stuff on the platform. This is Emma. Tess is the person who will be responding to you whenever you contact or make any kind of query. And she's also the person who's validating everyone. We are going to be recording tonight's event. So, and we're then going to upload it to our YouTube channel, and we're going to put it on the platform as well. And we'll be sure to include the chat. So if there's chat going on, then it's going to be saved, and we'll be able to see that and continue with the discussion later. Okay, so many people say that the current national divide in the government leadership, Brexit, COVID, and the ongoing situation in Russia and so on is worrying. However, an economic crisis has been building since 2012, and it is predicted that we will reach breaking point in the spring of 2022. It's a deep and it's a persistent crisis, and those are the words put into the Rowntree Report. The Rowntree Report illustrates that we have seen rising child poverty since 2012-13, and with rising inflation, which is currently at 5.4% and is predicted to increase, it's leading to increased food costs, energy costs, and the outlook over the next 4 months is extremely bleak. Furthermore, because of that, we can anticipate an increase in mortgages and therefore private rent as well as travel costs. So we will all be affected. 2.4 million families in this country were in destitution. That's 550,000 children in 2019. And that's a rise of 35% from 2017. So that kind of tells us that it's likely to be a really significant rise, because if that's what's happened from 17 to 19, then it's quite scary to predict what's going to happen from 19 to 22. And we already know that due to changes in the benefit system and just the way in which benefits are distributed, that's going to really impact on the most vulnerable in our society. I cannot emphasize enough that this is the crisis which predates COVID. So can I please ask us not to focus, I mean, COVID is a factor, But we're not here to talk about COVID and its impact on children today. We're here to talk about how poverty is impacting on our children today. The latest data also tells us a fifth of the population is in poverty, and child poverty continues to rise. And the latest data tells us that almost 1 in 3 children in the UK are living in poverty. That's 4.3 million children. Children have had the highest poverty rates throughout the last 25 years. So this is not news to us, but it is a problem which has become bigger. The main change in poverty depth over time has been an increase in the proportion of children in very deep poverty, with 36% of poor children in very deep poverty. And that's rising to 41% in the latest data. So that's almost half a class nationally. But obviously for us, we know that there are some schools where they won't be seeing poverty in this kind of way. And in other schools, so Chris's school, for example, I know that it's probably significantly higher. And I'm used to working in schools where we saw over 70% of children living in poverty. So onto the discussion. I'm going to ask each panelist to speak for 5 minutes, briefly outlining what is their response to the Rowntree Report and how it relates to what they are seeing in their roles in school today. Okay, and I'd like us to start with Chris, please.
As I unmute. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. And thank you so much, Alison, for inviting me to this absolute vital discussion with some fantastic panelists and a great audience that's out there contributing. I mean, what I found reading from the Rowntree Report is that what we've actually read in that really distressing report, in my opinion, is just the tip of the iceberg. What we don't know is the size of that iceberg underneath the water's surface. I mean, what we do know is that with the astronomical rise in fuel costs, and I think you touched on it a moment ago, Alison, when you was talking about the situation in Russia, that if Russia then invade Ukraine, then the Russians could well cut even the gas supply even more, which is going to put the costs up higher. And the simple fact for my school, and I work in Parklands in Seacroft, in Leeds, which is one of Europe's largest council estates, is that families are getting colder. I'm in school every day. I'm not one of those head teachers that go out and about and visit everywhere. I'm in school 99% of every single week of the school year. So I see what it's like. And when we do home visits to children, you know, when all the families just sat in big coats and things, it sets off alarm bells and real triggers and things. So, and again, and this really affects schools like ours and all children that are sort of in poverty. And it's that the most expensive gas and electricity tariffs are what our parents are paying. Anyone who's on a meter is paying a lot higher tariff per unit of gas and electricity than we're sat in our houses paying now. So I did a bit of research on this before this actual fuel crisis, during sort of lockdown. And I found out that 90% of our school community are actually on these meters. And then we've got to add into, so as I said, I'm looking at underneath the surface now and the size of the iceberg that's not even been sort of recognised yet. The new national insurance changes that are going to be coming in at any time now is going to have a catastrophic effect on the poverty. You know, we've got the hitting of the low-income families is going to be the greatest. And of course, the £20 uplift in the universal credits, which was stopped. And I had 6% down as inflation, but as you correctly said, Alison, it's currently at 5.4%, but it's going to be going high. So all costs are going up, and yet income streams are being cut. So for communities like mine and lots of communities out there, our families, you know, have got choices to make. Do they heat the home? Do they have showers and baths? Do they have a proper tea and things? And this is what breaks my heart. We're in 2022, when in a time of war or famine or pandemics that we've been seeing, we've got the same story over history where the rich are getting so much richer. The top 100 wealthiest people in the world over the last 18 months have got so much richer. And again, it's the people on the low-income families and the no-income families that are actually paying this cost back to the government. So the fact that the actual Rowntree report highlighted that low-income families have got less of a buffer against any increase in prices and things, because of course we know that these low-income families aren't going to have the savings like the middle class and the more wealthier people. And even when you're reading that Rowntree report, the out of work families are even, it's harder than the low income families. So, and again, to use your figures that you used, Alison, we've got this, the figures from the sort of Rowntree report was 2019, which had 2.4 million people and 500,000 children experiencing destitution in 2019. We're now in 2022, and that number could well have doubled, tripled, you know, we don't know. But one thing we do know is that we're in a real crisis situation here, where unless something's done, the gap that the government always loved talking about between the advantaged and the disadvantaged is going to continue to grow and to grow. So we need to urgently scrap the national insurance contribution, especially for the middle, low and no income families. We need to get tariffs on meters the same as what we're paying at home. The £20 universal credit has got to be reinstated. When you look at the millions and billions that we've wasted during this crisis, you know, and let's just give this £20 back, you know, for the time being, until we see the impact of the changes. And I said, nobody in 2022 in one of the richest countries in the world, as the United Kingdom is, should have children, should have families living in a situation like this.
I can only agree with every word you said, Chris, and thank you very much for a very important presentation, and your thoughts are really valuable, and I wish I could say you were wrong, and I can't, and that's what's really heartbreaking. And we'll come back in a little while just to talk to you a bit more about your role specifically as a head teacher. But I'd like to ask Sandip now to share her thoughts on her initial thoughts on the report and how she's seeing that in her classroom.
Right, thank you. Hello everyone. Hard act to follow there after Sir Chris Dyson, but okay, I'll try my best. So as a classroom teacher, I want to bring that lens in, and working every day with these children and being the agency of care for them during the day. The report is not as shocking to me. I've worked in the West Midlands. I've worked around schools for 15 years as a classroom teacher, mainly in disadvantaged areas. And it's not changing. It is getting worse. We can actually see it. We talk to children, we talk to parents. And I think as a classroom teacher, your role is really vital, because you are that primary agent of care. And if you can build strong relationships with children, you can provide that extra bit of care that they might be missing, because we know poverty affects your well-being, it affects your self-esteem, and obviously it's going to have an effect on your learning behaviours and your achievement. And so there's a lot of anxieties that can build up in children. So recognising that first and making sure that children are comfortable in school, making sure that they've built that relationship with you so they can talk to you about those things. So it's expanding your role from, rather than just trying to get scores and trying to get results, it's really honing in and looking at behaviours and why they are happening, and responding to those behaviours accordingly. And I really believe that it's based on care, compassion and understanding. And you need to have those three in place so children and families can turn to you and talk to you if they need to. In that particular area that I am, what we need to understand as well, we have these statistics, we have these numbers, but they, especially in the BAME community, there are a higher percentage of people, of families who are working on low incomes, and so they are, and it's because of the jobs that they are offered, and it's because of inequality. They don't have access for promotion or better roles, and so there is this sort of underlying group of people who are in work but paid extremely low. And we have children who are whose immigration status isn't clear, and so they miss out on so much funding or help, even healthcare. So it's taking into account your whole classroom, because it's getting to that point in some of these areas. It is the majority of your classroom, not the one or two.
Thank you, Sandip. And actually, you raised things there that I hadn't even thought about, or maybe that was really excellent. And thank you for making it so real for us, and sharing in that kind of way. And we're going to move on now to Anne-Marie, who's coming in with a different perspective, because Anne-Marie works as a consultant and used to be a social worker and now offers supporting schools around safeguarding. So it'd be really interesting to hear what you would like us to hear. Anne-Marie.
If I unmute, doesn't it? Can you hear me now? Sorry, our magic word of mute. We use it so many times a day, don't we? So thank you for the invitation. And obviously, in backing up what Chris and Sandip said just now in relation to the impact it's having on children, families. I qualified in the mid-90s when I did see quite a lot of poverty actually there in where I was working, from families who's impacted on their health and their choices. And that's what I'm seeing again now. So over the last, say, 10 years, I have seen a lot of schools talking about, for example, food bank vouchers. That was something that disappeared for a few decades. It's come back again and it's grown. I've seen children hearing stories at home about stress, i.e. debts, families worrying, homelessness, the impact of stress and worry, hence people in debt, in further debt. I've got a fantastic example of a head teacher told me this story. This is very pre-COVID, so it's demonstrating we had this before the COVID scenario. She overheard parents in the playground talking, and a parent had borrowed another parent 50p, and the other parent had to say to that other parent, "You owe me 50p, can I have my 50p please?" So 50p for this parent was half a pound. Does that make sense? Rather than a 50p in some people's coin being a meter for the paying for your car park, whatever. So for this family, 50p was a loaf of bread. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just really highlighting. And when I heard that, it really pinched me to make me recognize and reflect on, for some families, they're adding up their coins, they're in debt, they're dry in the sense of they have no money. They're getting themselves into more trickier situations, like the loan sharks. We know people are vulnerable when it comes to debt, the anxiety it brings, the stress it brings, the fear of agencies getting involved. Because with my social work hat on, we know about the basic care. Is it good enough? Choosing between heating your home, feeding your children, providing clothing, washing your clothing, using the energy in your house to either heat your clothes, i.e. have a bath, and then or wash your clothes. So it's really all those little things. And also with the county lines that the police call it, or criminal organisation or organised crime, we saw in the last few years more parents getting involved as adults at risk, getting involved in quick money, in the sense of money laundering, whatever it might be, to get an extra £50 or something, or holding people's money. So I've seen more of that as well in the vulnerabilities of people targeting families where there is debt. The fear of relapse. So stress brings relapse, doesn't it, in the sense of how you manage stress and how you're coping, whether it's substance misuse, mental health, or alcohol use as well. And the temptation of the quick fix of crime. So we're thinking of, digital poverty, which is a word that we learned over the last 2 years, but also the pressure cooker environment, which I seeing a lot, where the stress is building up, and we're getting to a point where children are now worrying about their family circumstances. You know, they're hearing adult conversations, they're hearing more arguing. They feel really uncomfortable asking family for some money to do something that an average child might just ask their family for, you know. So the whole thing about peer pressure again in the latest gadgets that children want, you know, so more families going into, again, those loans to get things to please their children, you know. So for me, I'm definitely seeing an increase of schools doing a lot of old school social work in the sense of community-based work, signposting them to charities, giving them hampers at Christmas, you know, recycling uniform, you know, the food banks they've got there, and also applying for funds themselves through the school. You know, the new washing machine. You know, years ago we used to recycle furniture in social care and have furniture projects. You know, I've seen them happen again now. So I think it's just looking at the bigger picture, from going back to what does it mean for us now in how we can try and support this current situation, that we, you know, give all children an opportunity to still have a, you know, a comfortable life, the right to be a child, the right to be safe, the right to feel comfortable and be with your family without it getting to crisis point where unfortunately caregivers and parents are in a meltdown where they can't cope. And that was one of the reasons why I left the front line in 2010 permanent, because I saw it was very reactive and crisis intervention in social care rather than being preventative and supportive.
That was really profoundly moving. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
And really grateful for you making me think in the way that you did. So I just want to, gosh, where to go with this? Chris, can you talk us about how you're going to bridge the gap between the haves in your school? And I know most of the children in your school are in poverty, but some will have more than others. So how will you bridge the gap between the haves and the poorest pupils in their school? How will you ensure that they have equity of access? So having one of the schools that I worked in was incredibly middle class. And I was always painfully reminded of the fact that things like the extended curriculum was the playground for the richest kids rather than for the poorest kids, and then thinking about how we could include them. And is it possible, given the additional pressures being put on the ever decreasing school budgets, for you to be able to go on supporting the poorest children in your school? Because most head teachers do have a little pot which they can support the poorest kids with. And should it be the role of schools to bridge that gap?
A great question, because we all know that the funding in education, whether or not you're in a deprived school, a leafy lane school, no matter what school, is that the funding, you know, we've been promised in the next 2 years it's going back to the 2014 level, yabbity-doo, you know. So there is no money in school budgets to do this. So as heads, and as a head teacher myself, I've had to be really, really creative by building business links with businesses. And that means incorporating those businesses into your school life, whether or not they're coming to do painting projects, whether they're coming to do decorating projects, whether they're coming to do write to read projects, and all things like that. And funny enough, I had a visit today from a wonderful, fantastic organisation called Magic Breakfast. And I'd urge any school that's got high deprivation, and we're talking high deprivation for things like Magic Breakfast at being 30% pupil premium. Now we're close to 70 and things. And the contribution that Magic Breakfast has made to our school now, during COVID, pre-COVID, has been absolutely immense. You know, they are sending cereals in from Kellogg's. We're getting unlimited Scottish porridge oats. We're getting Tropicana orange juice. We're getting Bagel Nash from the New York Bagel Company. And all this food comes into school. And a lot of schools, like my own children's school, when you're paying £5-6 a child for pre-breakfast club or after-school clubs, I can't charge that money for my parents and my community. If you've got 3 children, they can't be paying £15 every day just to come in and have breakfast. So again, we've got to get the funding right. So, but as I said, the Magic Breakfast who came in today have been absolutely spectacular. In, I think during lockdown in times, I think we've had around about £151,000 worth of goods, which has gone all out to the community. so nobody is going hungry. But we obviously didn't have that money in our school budget. But again, getting a breakfast there, getting activities that's totally free, gets the children up out of bed and into school where it's warm. I know lots of people got windows open at the moment, but it's warm. There's hot water in the sinks and things. There's a hot breakfast we can have. I forgot Heinz baked beans delivery as well. So today you could either add beans on bagel, or porridge, or traditional cereals, but it's giving them something warm inside. And again, thinking outside that box. Our most vulnerable time is the 2 weeks Christmas holiday, the 6 weeks summer holiday, the 2 weeks Easter holiday. So again, working with companies, we sponsor days out. And these companies, because you're inviting them in, you're not just, oh, let's have your money, you're involving them in the school life. So for example, I know everyone was tired at the end of autumn term, and we finished on Friday, December the 18th, but we opened up Saturday the 19th, Monday the 21st, Tuesday the 22nd, and Wednesday the 23rd, because these children needed a right to have a lovely hot breakfast and a lovely hot meal in those holiday times, as well as having quality sort of activities to do, because it's a lonely life on the estate. Again, for myself on holiday time, we can pop to Scarborough, Whitby, over to Liverpool, down to London. But if you've got no money on an estate, you're on that estate. So by opening school up in the holiday time, and all these things have knock-on effect for behaviour and things, because they see the school that cares and going that extra yard. For teaching assistants, and my goodness, if I had any wish, I'd double teaching assistants' pay. But by opening up at Christmas and getting businesses to sponsor means I can afford to pay my TAs double wage for working a day. So if they do 3 days over the Christmas time, they get an extra week's salary. And again, these people sort of need that. So I'd suggest thinking out the box, liaising with companies like Let's Localise, who provide laptops and provide dongles that are totally free and things. But it's, I hope that sort of answers your questions, but because there's no money in budgets today, you've got to think out of that box. And one good thing about businesses, especially at Christmas time, is that when they have a bit of guilt over their sort of spreadsheet showing how much wealth they're making, they want to give something back into school. So invite them in, showcase your school, make them feel valued and welcome, and they can make an immense difference to the pupils and their well-being and their families. Thank
you, Chris. Thank you. I'll always remember one winter when it was snowing, maybe 2017 or something. A child, I always used to, if it snowed, I'd open for sure. I didn't care how long it took me to get there. And a child walking for about an hour and a half without any kind of snow, no proper coat or shoes or whatever, because he needed to come to school because it was warm and he was going to be fed. And that for me was always an incredibly moving moment in headship.
I'm all in for sort of staff welfare, but the only time my staff get frustrated with me is when it snows and people think it's going to be a snow day, but they know I've got to open that school because I've got to get those kitchens open. Even if the kids just come in at 12 o'clock, grab something to eat, and then it closes and things.
Go home again.
And another great thing is, and now it's more difficult if you're in a multi-academy trust to do this, but I'm a standalone local authority school. And one of the first things I did when I started Parklands was I took the badge off the uniform. We all love a lovely school uniform, showcasing and things. I took the badge off. They wear a red jumper and a white T-shirt that you can get from Asda for £3 and 3 pack of T-shirts for £5 and things. And again, that makes such a difference to parents because it does cause them a shock when they go to high school and then suddenly the first term's uniform is costing going on £300 and things with the PE kits now. They've got to be sort of logoed up and things. So,
yeah, thank you. That's a really important point. So, Sandy, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So earlier you talked about the fact that the children do come in, they might be vulnerable, you'll be seeing their vulnerability and their behaviours and their attitudes to learning and all that kind of stuff. And you are you see yourself as the, what was the word, primary carer? Is that what you said? Okay, so if I were to play devil's advocate, do you think that this is an excuse for lowering the attainment bar for some children because they're dealing with so much? So maybe you can talk to that.
No way. I believe in compassion, not excuses. So you don't put in an excuse for that child already in your mind, but you do need to show them some understanding. If we just take the digital divide, let's say, and it's not just about getting children devices. They don't have Wi-Fi. Some of them are using mobile data and a screen this big. And when that data runs out, they don't have any more. But most of our homework and a lot of things are moving online. We've all got apps, we've all got these competitions, and they need to take part, they want to take part. No child doesn't want to learn, and no parent doesn't want their child to learn. So it's about not having that excuse and bringing them into school and giving them the time at school to use the device if they need to, because it's not going to get sold overnight. So you need to be doing something right now and not waiting for this magic cash lump sum that's never going to arrive. So you need to give them that opportunity to use the devices at school and get in that competition and achieve just like everyone else.
What a fabulous answer. I love that. Thank you very much. And Anne-Marie, with the national economic crisis, we're going to see an increase. We all become vulnerable because we're going to see an increase in street violence. We know there's going to be an increase in domestic violence. There's definitely an increase in homelessness. And we also know that there's a real big difference between the lifespan of the poorest people in the country and the richest. In fact, I live in Haringey, and there's a 7-year difference between families living in Tottenham, lifespan difference between families living in Tottenham and families living in Muswell Hill. And it's 6 square miles. So that kind of just highlights the fact that poverty impacts on your lifespan. So what can schools be doing to safeguard their community? Because children will be frightened, won't they?
They will be. And also just being aware of contextual safeguarding, risk outside the family home, including those hotspots in the local area where they could be recruited into organised crime. So we know about child criminal exploitation, we know about child sexual exploitation, we know that the temptation to for gifts, for general money or wealth or the latest trainers would be an easier kind of thought compared to if they could be provided themselves at home. And also just being aware that liaising with the local authority, the early help model, and thinking about the reality of homelessness as well, the reality of intentional homelessness in the sense of people who are in debt that cannot afford to pay rent arrears. So it's again, every local authority has the one-stop shops where you can signpost people to get support before the crisis bit of court, evictions, etc. That is very stressful. I've got lots of families who get that letter around being evicted from their homes, in the sense of being homeless, what that means for the children, the unsettlement, but also going to another school. So I think by being very open with families and letting them know that you can support them as soon as they get any notification, because some of them might be able to read and write as well, in the sense of understanding what this brown envelope means. And sometimes it's just seen as another letter rather than the seriousness of it. And I think it's just, again, being aware of, going back to Chris's point, working with your local communities, whether it's your local faith groups or whatever it might be. I think another good one is Christian Aid, isn't it, or Christian Poverty. There's a few organisations across the country that really are helping those families on the ground, in the sense of on the operational level. So we've just got to be aware of knowing our families, creating a community hub where we could offer support as soon as a problem emerges. Going back to how we can support them to still access learning, going back to Sandip's point about there's no magic money that's going to give them these, amazing kind of devices. What can we do to get them back in to try and engage away from the streets, the whole thing about following up absences, etc. So we just got to be more aware of how there'll be more temptations for them around them. Going back to Chris's point again around living in certain areas where as you walk out of your home, you're going to be surrounded by peer pressure to get involved in certain things, to conform, the peer pressure of doing things for your families, your older brother's friends, whatever it might be. And, the temptation of believing that these are your second family. That's what young people tell us. They do feel safe with these people because they know them. So we just got to be aware of exploitation and how vulnerable the adult could also be in the exploitation as well. you know, so we just got to be more aware, more alert, and don't expect them to tell us. So we've just got to be more involved in some ways, and upskill your staff to look out for those signs and those triggers, being more aware on the school gates, all those little things that could feed into the intelligence around what's really happening for that family, rather than expect people to come and tell you. So it's just creating an environment or a culture in your setting where we're not judgmental, but we're very supportive and understanding. And discreet, because some people don't like to talk out openly about things, so making some things very discreet as well, that they have got that space to talk. And try to encourage some of your non-teaching staff to have like a drop-in. People love a drop-in, you know, in the sense of where somebody can talk to you about a particular issue they've got, which is to them a massive problem, but you can signpost them to get some support. So that's also another good one, where you've got someone who creates like a parenting support network in some way to signpost and help people.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anne-Marie. So I'm going to ask a question now which anyone can join in, rather than just the panel, but obviously the panel can go on contributing. One of the, I mean, we've talked a lot about pupils today and the crisis, you know, the economic crisis and how it's affecting child poverty. But we also know that it's affecting the staff, and the percentage of working age adults in poverty is at its highest ever. So teachers who are at the, you know, the beginner teachers who may be on M1, M2, or actually actually any teacher in London who's on main scale cannot afford to live in London, which is absolutely awful. I can remember having staff who were M6 who were in student house shares because that was the only way for them to be able to cope. And of course, support staff. Chris was talking about support staff who are definitely struggling. So that means that you've probably got half your workforce who are going to be adversely affected if they aren't already adversely affected by the current inflation challenges that we have. So what can we do to support staff who are working? And we know, you know, nobody does this magic of, you know, 32-hour week. No teacher's doing that. No, support staff always stay, you know, extra. I call this platform Above and Beyond because it's a profession where people go above and beyond what is written in their job descriptions. So this is going to affect staff morale, it's going to affect attendance, it's going to affect them in the same way that it's affecting the children. So what can we be doing to support our staff? Who would like to? Any thoughts? Chris?
I mean, it's the little things. As I alluded to, sort of what I was saying before, I think teachers would love a pay rise. You know, head teachers, SLT would love pay rises, but I think we've got to start with the grassroots in the school, which are the unsung heroes, which are the teaching assistants. You know, and by doing little things such as letting them have a free breakfast, letting them have free tea and coffee, letting them have a free meal at lunchtime, in exchange for them doing a 30 minutes sort of club at lunchtime and things, which again focus and engages the children. We're not talking catch-up sort of lessons, we're talking dance club, ICT club, whatever the children want, pottery and things. So those little bits help. And as I said, I'm not the biggest supporter of the DFE by any means, but their holiday grants that come through take a bit of time doing the application. But again, if you're successful, which a lot of schools are, because a lot of schools don't take them up in that sort of holiday time because everyone needs a break and things. But as I said, when you're looking at 6 weeks holiday for a teaching assistant, they might be lucky to go away for a week. Some might be very lucky to go away for 2 weeks. But the other 4 and 5 weeks of that term is idle. So if you can get into these grants, you can afford to be paying these staff. Obviously, you can't make them pay, but they want to be in. They want to be earning some extra money. So as I said, that's really been valuable. But while I wait for those, it's little things, as I said, like the milk money, you know, and not going around every 3 weeks, you know, can have £3 milk money and things. So those little tiny things. I think everyone's muted.
Yeah, I thought I'd unmuted and I hadn't. So one of the things that I know that staff worry about is that they need to be careful about how much they earn, because it affects their benefits. So as soon as even if they go over by £1, then it means they can lose their benefits, which means that they have more increased poverty by working more. So that bit is really, really complex. So yeah, it is difficult. It is difficult and something to be really mindful of. But I'm also very conscious about their well-being and how they feel coming to school every day, because sometimes we expect a lot, and it could be that they could just be panic-stricken. Anne-Marie and Sandeep both spoke a little bit about the way in which our Black and Asian families might be affected by this. Because we know we are a divided nation, and we've been talking quite a lot about the difference between the poorest kids and the children who maybe have more money in their families. So yes, there's definitely a gap between the richest and the poorest, which is widening. But there's also a significant difference between white and Black families, especially the Bangladeshi, Pakistani and Black families, who are over 40% in poverty, which is significantly higher than any other group. And yes, I know that white working class families, we must make sure that we talk about the white working class families. And I think you've got a fair number of white working class families, Chris. And obviously, white working class boys are one of the underachieving groups in this country. But I'll tell you one statistic that I read about over the past week, which actually bothered me significantly. And that is, if you take the national average of income, for every £1 earned by a white family, a Black family earns 10p. 10p. So it broke my heart, because it just shows, as a Black woman, it just shows how hard we've got to work for that 10p. And the other thing that we know about is that those families, the Bangladeshi, the Pakistani, the Black families, the new migrants to this country and so on, all the families are on 0 hours. They can't afford to get sick, they can't have access to benefits and all those sorts of things, and they really, really live in crisis. So what factors do we need to consider here, and what can we do about it? Because there is no quick win on this one. And again, I'd be interested in anyone's voice, because I think that's a really shocking thing to know about.
Well, I mean, you say there, £1, 10 pence, and we look at the senior positions in schools, we look at the senior positions in CEOs, we look at senior positions in CEOs in maths, for example. In fact, the entire organisation of education is very, very, very predominantly, very much a white male sort of situation. So we've got to tackle these problems. Boris Johnson, he's putting his foot in it each and every day. So we need to be highlighting these things. When you see the pictures of these lovely schools that they go and see, the DFE again, they're predominantly a really white, sort of privileged sort of background. And these things need challenging. These things need highlighting, and we've got to make a difference. We've seen the pay between the male and female getting narrower, but the males still by far significantly earn more than females. But that shift now is actually starting to come to fruition. And you look at things like the BBC, where people are on equal pay now, and that's perfectly correct and things. So by highlighting and pushing these facts, the pay gap between the different ethnicities really has got to narrow. And the only way we're going to do that is by using social media platforms, by using the media to the advantage to get what a fair wage for fair work. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there with the 0 hour contracts. These are the people that can't afford to go and do lateral flow tests all the time, because all it needs is a positive case to come in, and then they can't work for the next 10 days and things. So 0-hour contracts really, again, need to change. So everybody who's got a job has equal rights. We've seen a change in Uber, for example, where the Uber drivers didn't have holiday pay, weren't entitled to sick pay, but some invisible person somewhere was making millions and millions of pounds off the back of hard-working people. So again, we've got to create that noise to get the change.
Yeah, we do. And Penny's just put up that United Learning have an all-white senior team, and they decide on all of the head teachers in their school. And I know today London Heads tweeted out that Harris Academy, which has been going since 1990, runs 51 academies, and they only have 7% Black and Asian representation at the senior level, which is, you know, but this is what we see in, it's not just in education, it is in every single profession. So I just think that we do need to be mindful about the fact that, you know, the Black and, you know, the Asian and the Black kids and the new migrants in this country are often the ones who are, their poverty is masked because they don't have access to benefits. So it's not counted in the same kind of way. So actually most schools have higher poverty than others. Audrey, did you want to say something?
I do. Hello, everyone. I just think it's just such a shame. This is a rich country. We are actually a very rich country. And, you know, you go to any country, if you go to Ghana, and if I use Ghana because I'm from Ghana, when you travel around there and you see poverty, and it's not a case of I'm poorer than you situation, but simply you see where there is a lack of infrastructure with regards to the support that people will have. And you see people just begging and trying to work and trying to raise their self-esteem by selling on the streets, etc. Effectively, in this country, you know, when I came back from Ghana, I remember coming back and just thinking there shouldn't be any poverty in this country because this country is rich. Everybody, relatively speaking, in this country is rich. And yet here we are, as Chris said, 2022, and we're sitting here talking about people that can't get breakfast in their bellies to come in to school and learn. We've got staff that probably have to scrimp and save to get to school to come and earn their money. You know, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, depending on where you live. And it's just crazy. And I wonder whether there is I don't know, just, you know, the observations that, you know, the panelists have said 100%, you know, Sandip is the class teacher, first line of call, where you're seeing it and you're recognizing it, or maybe as a head, Chris, when you're standing outside and you're talking to parents and you're hearing and you're reading between the lines and you're thinking, yeah, I know that you haven't eaten since last night because you're making that choice between either heat or eat. And then you've got the situation where, you know, Anne-Marie, where you've probably gone in and just seen stuff and thought, wow, and you know full well that somebody's holding money for somebody else because actually that's the best way of getting some cash in quick. And then before you know it, you know that, you know, they're being cuckooed, the house is being taken over. All of this stuff is, you can't blame anyone for doing what they do in order to get by. There's no blame involved. I guess it's really now just about what are we prepared to take? What are we prepared to tolerate? Because the church I go to, similarly, you know, I remember having talks and listening to people talking about lunch. This was back in 2016, 2017. I remember thinking, is that even a thing? And now, of course, we all talk about it. And because maybe the culture and because of COVID and the glaring kind of disparities between the different kind of socioeconomic groups has shown actually, yeah, don't muck about. This is what you're seeing. We're in a culture now and we've got the climate where surely now we can't sit there and let a footballer be more sensible than the Prime Minister. Not that I dislike Marcus Rashford, I love him, but it shouldn't be down to a footballer or a F1, you know, Formula 1 racing star to have to sit there and think, you know, why are we it's messed up. It's just messed up. And I just wonder whether there is going to be, if we're not already in a revolution, you know, we need one. I just feel we need one. this isn't how this world was designed, and this country especially. I'm disheartened every time I read that kids can't eat and get to school. It's just disheartening. It shouldn't be that way. And as Chris rightly says, the rich are getting rich, poor are getting poorer, and we're all about to get hit with the fuel bills thing going on and the national insurance thing. It's a perfect storm waiting to happen. We've got to do something before this happens, because otherwise it's just carnage, isn't it? We're already living in it, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Can I stick with you, Audrey? I wanted to ask you another question, which is just based on your time when you were a head teacher of a special school.
Yes.
And obviously, a lot of families are in poverty because they can't go to work because they're primary carers.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is penalising people for being primary carers. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the whole thing about the systems in which people are trying to get money to enable to live, so, you know, disabled living allowance and things like that, and the barriers that are put in place that stop people from accessing the money that they're entitled to, or rightly so, with regards to, you know, the child's learning disability and the challenges that presents anyway. You've also got self-esteem going on in this as well, haven't you? Where you've got adults who are, you know, heads of families who want to work but can't because of the child's learning disabilities, and so, you know, they go without, and the stresses and strains that are there within that anyway. And then on top of that, you've got, you know, the lack of money. It's, you know, anything I could do, I would do it, anything. So if it meant, you know, embellishing a child's disability, not illegally, might I add, I'm not an illegal person. I'm law abiding. But equally, I would push it to the nth degree to make sure that that person got that benefit. And only this morning I was at coffee with a parent that I used to work with, and you know, and she was talking about the forms and stuff, and I said, God, do you remember the forms? And she always used to say, yes, Audrey, you always used to make sure you got those forms done. And I would always turn them round fast, because I know that's the difference between getting some food today or not getting some food tomorrow. So it's horrendous. And so I think with learning difficulties, parents who are trying their hardest to support their children, but then equally are kind of literally doing stuff with one hand or two hands tied behind their back because of the disability of the child and the demands of looking after that child, plus the lack of, you know, money coming in, they can't work, and then also then they've got forms that they can fill in to get money, but actually it's denied them, or it's just made really difficult. That's my reality. So anything I could do, as I say, I would do it. I would put on the extra breakfasts. I would, you know, just go the extra mile, as just exactly as Chris has described. I think, you know, it was no skin off my nose to do that, and I would use my money. You know, I know it's public money, but I would use it for that benefit, and I would talk to anyone, and they could challenge me on that, and I'll tell you why I want to make sure that child is full up so they can learn, rather than sitting there, you know, throwing chairs across the room because actually they're starving, hungry, they didn't eat last night. Sorry, it's a no-brainer. I'll put food in your belly first.
Thank you.
Can I just come in there, Alison? Wasn't that fantastic?
Yes,
that was stingly. I've got all goose pimply there and things, but I love the comment saying, I'm not a rule breaker, I'm very honest and things, but again, it's coming to that creativity. Because another thing that I do that is so effective in bringing extra money into school is that obviously with universal free school meals in reception and Key Stage 1, you don't always get the parents claiming their sort of free school meals. So therefore, schools losing out on all that, basically £2,500 pupil premium money. So we offer all families in early years and Key Stage 1 that if you actually claim your free school meals and show us a letter, then we give you £30 in Tesco vouchers. So again, it's just being creative. I do get done off the council for you're not supposed to blackmail like that and try and, but you've got to be creative, because if I get £30 away and then in reception, I'm getting £2,400 for that child for the next 7 years and things. So the uptake of that tends to get us round about 15, 20 new people claiming every year, which again has the impact of bringing money into school, which is all to the benefit of the children and things. So
You know what? I never thought of that. I wish I had. Thank you, Chris. That's great. I'd really like Raj and Penny maybe to speak and share their thoughts from a governance perspective, because we haven't had that voice here today. Raj, Penny? Oh, Penny's going to say something. Hey, Penny.
I was just going to volunteer Raj to say something.
You two normally have a lot to say. Go for it.
Okay. I think there's far too much common sense in this group, to be honest with you. I think if we were running the country, we would be in a downside better place. What concerns me more than anything is that there seems to be, we've known this problem existed before COVID. We know COVID had exacerbated the problem. We know that poverty is linked to a whole host of other issues, all around society, around children, domestic violence. There's a whole host of issues that are that come up as a result of poverty. And therefore, what I don't understand is why is there such an unwillingness amongst those in power to appreciate that if they don't solve those problems, they're just going to get worse. Not just that, my concern has to be for schools and school leaders and school staff, because the bottom line is we are losing people. They're not coming in fast enough, and we're expected to do more and more and more. And yes, we can, I mean, Chris does a fantastic job. I know loads of head teachers, loads of schools do a fantastic job supporting the children as best they can. And, you know, charities are helping, all of that. But as Audrey said earlier, we're a rich country. What the hell do we need to do all this, you know? My concern is about school staff. My concern is about workloads. And I think that, okay, the solution has to be, they're going to have to fund it somehow. Either give schools the extra money so we can employ staff and do it ourselves, yeah? Or look at the bigger picture in society and say, right, in 2022, this level of poverty is not acceptable. And therefore, we are going to fix it. We're going to fix that. And, you know, as educators, what do? Do we speak up? Do we all say, look, come on, this is simply not acceptable. We can't do any more. We're already doing as much as we can, not because we don't want to, but you're not helping us. You're not giving us the money. You're not letting us have the expertise. And we see that through, you know, social workers. I know that the caseload through the roof. And as soon as anything goes wrong, who is blamed? They always have to find somebody to blame. And every single time it's the same scenario. Oh, let's have another serious case review. What do we learn from the last serious case review? Not a fat lot. We didn't actually do anything about it. So I think, you know, whilst it's admirable that schools are doing the best they can, my personal view is we are using sticky plasters. This is not a long-term sustainable solution. And I think as a society, we have to fight for that long-term sustainable solution. I think I've said enough now. Thank you.
I think you stated it beautifully, Raj. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end, 2 minutes before 8 o'clock. I want to say a huge thanks to Tess, Sandip, Anne-Marie and Chris, and to all of you who've joined us this evening. Please continue the discussion on the platform and on the platform in the Talking Education Forum, as well as on social media using the hashtag Talking Education, as well as the hashtag UK Poverty 22. Our next forum is going to be on Wednesday, the 23rd of February at 7 p.m. I can't tell you what it's going to be about, because there's always going to be whatever is most pertinent in the news the week beforehand. But if you would like to be on the panel, then please let me know directly. It's open to everyone who is directly working in education. So this isn't open to all. So either you are someone employed, it doesn't matter what your role is, but you're employed in a school, or you are a governor or a trustee, or you provide a service to the school. So it's a professional discussion rather than open to everyone else. But I really think that was our first one. I think that was intelligent, and you've definitely made me think, and I am so proud that we had this today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you later. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.